Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, as always, joined by Dakota Lasky. Dak, how you doing?
Pretty good. Had to turn my AC off, so I'm sure I'll be hot pretty soon. Finally got to work out with actual weights for the first time since March yesterday, which was awesome. I'm super sore from that, but feeling pretty good. Been streaming a lot of Halo 3 on my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/therapture_. And yeah, just chilling. The perpetual wait for another Metroid game continues, and I am on that ride whenever it ends. I cannot wait. But yeah, doing pretty good. How you doing?
I can't complain. As you know, me and my fiance went away, or kind of went away this weekend, so we had a nice little couple days, but back and ready to talk about, well, actually not Metroid today, but one thing that you said really quick, I saw a rumored date today for the 17th of August, so we'll see if that pans out. Next week's show could maybe be a whole lot different, depending on if that day is true or not.
For a direct, right?
We will see. For a direct, yes.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We will see. But yeah, things are going pretty good. I loved that tweet that you retweeted that was like something along the lines of like Willem Dafoe wanted to play Ridley. I guess that's old news, but I saw it and I thought that it was like hilarious. Yeah. Mostly just because I don't imagine Ridley talking in a movie. So I kind of loved that he would sound like the Green Goblin.
Yeah, that was along the lines of like the Brie Larson wanted to play Samus thing. Willem Dafoe is a legend, great actor, one of the best to ever do it. So I'm sure if anyone could do Ridley justice, it'd be him. I have no idea how he would do it, how it would even be pulled off, how he would approach the role or whatever. But the image of him playing Ridley, or even wanting to play Ridley at all, the guy's got great taste. So yeah, let him run with it.
Let me throw a name out there for you for who I think should play Ridley, and give me a one-word either answer or noise about this. Dave Bautista.
I guess I don't know.
Okay, I think that says it all right there. The silence.
I like Bautista.
Okay, well,
I don't know.
Before we get into today's Inspired by Metroid episode, we should talk about something that's quite depressing. If you're a Metroid fan, Animal Crossing New Horizons came out on the 20th of April. It has been out for 3 months. 3 months. And it is one of the best-selling games of all time. 22 million copies sold. For context, the PlayStation 2 is the best-selling system of all time. And the top-selling games for the PlayStation 2 didn't come close to what Animal Crossing New Horizons has sold. San Andreas, I think, sold 16 or 17 million copies. New Horizon, 22. And it's been out for 3 months. For other context, in that 3 months, it has sold more than the entire Metroid series, as our pals over at Nintendo Life were so nice as to point out. Man, that's kind of funny, but it's also kind of depressing, is it not?
I don't think so. I mean, casual sim games have been popular like forever. I think the Sims franchise has sold like 200 million copies, or I don't know, some crazy number like that. Like more people are going to enjoy a game like Animal Crossing than a game like Metroid. I mean, that's just how it is. I guess I feel like your identity or personality is super tied to Metroid, and that's something you really care about, like sales. I guess that's depressing. I think it's kind of a given that, and that's even besides the fact that Nintendo doesn't even market Metroid at all. But even if it did, I really don't even think it would make that much of a difference in terms of trying to compete with that kind of game. A game like Animal Crossing appeals to way more kinds of gamers and non-gamers, people who can just, jump in, or, an adult or a younger kid or an older person who can play a little bit, or someone who casually it appeals to so many more people. And again, how often do we know that like just because something doesn't sell as much as something else doesn't necessarily mean it's not good? And I've never played a Metroid game caring about whether or not other people buy the Metroid game. Like if I'm the only one playing the game and I'm enjoying it, I don't care. So yeah, I guess it is like, it kind of sucks, I guess, but I personally don't really think it's a huge deal. I know some people were more bothered by it being pointed out in the first place. Like, oh, that just sucks for us Metroid fans, so I even rub it in. But it came from like some guy on Twitter tweeting about it, and then a bunch of like news sites picked it up and were like, oh, that's a good factoid. We could run that article. I thought it was just kind of an observation someone made. It was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, okay. But I'm sure, I mean, there are tons of franchises that Animal Crossing has outsold too. I don't think any of those are any worse for wear. So I don't know. I don't think it's really that depressing. I think it's a pretty interesting factoid, and maybe just, Animal Cross. I mean, Nintendo made a good move putting out Animal Crossing, and so good on them. Maybe some more people
I
will
mean,
buy
I think
Metroid
the
Prime
state
4.
of the
I don't
world,
know.
like the state of the world, definitely kind of helped. I think boost the sales of Animal Crossing, but it would
You
have
think so?
sold.
I don't.
You
I
know,
think. I don't think it made a
I
huge
think so.
difference. I think people would have still bought it.
I really do. People would have still bought it, but I think that to the extent that they bought it, I think that maybe the game would have been in like the 12, 15 million sale range rather than like where it is now, just because of the state of the world. It's I actually agree with you. Like it's kind of funny, but like kind of depressing, but only depressing because like obviously we just think that the Metroid games are so good and we're so passionate about them, so we want more people. And
Right.
I'm talking for both of us. I'm sorry if I'm just talking for you, but like we just want more people to experience Metroid,
I
right?
agree
So
with
it's
that.
just like, oh man. But it also is, I think, kind of funny too. I wasn't really just like bitter. Like I saw some tweets on
Yeah.
Twitter where just like f these guys for publishing that. It's also sold more than Star Fox or F Zero or Punch Out. Maybe not Punch Out, but you know what I mean. So it's not like they were. They were kind of picking on Metroid, but I think Metroid is a big boy and can take care of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just kind of funny. I'm gonna give a quick plug here. Actually, my other podcast, Virtual Theater, where we do video game movie reviews, we actually just covered the Animal Crossing movie. So if you're looking for some Animal Crossing kind of insight, check that out over on SoundCloud. I've never been able to get into Animal Crossing. It's just like it's not my thing. I don't mind pouring 200 hours into a game, but like there has to be a payoff or like an end goal or something, you know?
Yeah. Certainly. I guess really the gameplay loop for me is why I kind of get, Animal Crossing becomes kind of old for me. If like the what you get to play with is fun enough and satisfying enough, then I don't necessarily need like an end goal to reach. But Animal Crossing both doesn't have the end goal, and the gameplay kind of gets a little boring after a while for me. But I know a lot of people really enjoy it. I've bought most Animal Crossing games, and I still, jump in and play them a little bit. They're fun to unwind with, but they're one of those games where when other games start coming out afterward, I end up jumping into those games, and Animal Crossing kind of falls by the wayside. And to be honest, I
Yeah.
also bought it because I happen to have some like money on my Nintendo account already. So I was like, whatever. It's only really $30 for me now, so I might as well just buy it. But yeah, I mean, I get the appeal though, and I like Animal Crossing, and I understand why it's sold so much. But Metroid's niche, nothing wrong with that, and I hope that Metroid Prime 4 brings in a lot more people.
Yep, you nailed it. Actually, you nailed it so succinctly. Let's just move on because Dak, we have a lot to cover today.
I do.
We're back with our second ever Inspired by Metroid sub series on the Omega Metroid podcast. So this is a series aimed to basically, tell our listeners about these other games that if you enjoy Metroid, you'll probably enjoy these games, and for us to give our thoughts and feedback playing them. And today we are going to be talking about Blasphemous, which is a recent Inspired by Metroid title, wicked Metroidvania game. It's developed by the Game Kitchen and is available pretty much everywhere. It's available on all consoles and Steam. So if you're interested and you see it on sale, pick it up. But yeah, we're gonna get into the nitty gritty and talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. And Dak, I think that you and I already, I can tell from our conversation before recording, have some different opinions here. So I guess without just getting into the details, which we will over the course of the show, tell us about your experience just playing Blasphemous, what platform you played it on, and just really generally whether you liked it or not.
Sure. So I played Blasphemous on Steam on my PC. I played it with mouse and keyboard. And I really enjoyed this game. I'm getting close to saying loved it, but I don't know if love is a strong word. I really liked it though. I would say that I enjoyed it more than Axiom Verge. Um, Now
Okay.
whether or not you might like it because, and whoever's listening, because it's like Inspired by Metroid. I think people just like it because it's a good game. It reminded me more of Castlevania than Metroid.
Yes.
So it definitely had. It's definitely, I would say, more weighted towards a Castlevania experience in the
It's more
Metroidvania.
Vania than Metroid
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. It's the capital
Yeah.
Vania and lowercase Metroid, which is fine. I think honestly, it's just a really solid game, and that's why people would enjoy it, regardless of whether or not it has like the Metroidvania or whatever influence. I think it's like a really solid game. It was a lot of fun. I was pleasantly surprised with it. And yeah, I had a great time playing it, and I can't wait to talk about it more. So far, I would recommend it. Though I would say, I would try to see if it'll jump on sale somewhere. I do recommend playing the Steam version. I haven't played the console version, so I can't talk about those. But the Steam version was great and runs great. And yeah, so overall, I enjoyed it more than Axiom Verge, and I liked it a lot.
Okay, wow. I will say I did not like this more than Axiom Verge, but I mean, I kind of have a soft spot for Axiom Verge because as I was talking about on that episode, that was like that game came out of nowhere for me. I didn't know what it was at all, and when I was playing it, I was like, wow, this is like Super Metroid 2. This is awesome. So that game kind of I have a softer side for, but I think even beyond that, I don't know that I liked Blasphemous more than that. I do really like the setting of this game, and I do like that
Mm.
it's more along the lines of like the Vania rather than Metroid because I also have an itch for like the Castlevania games because I'm a big fan of the run of games that started with Symphony of the Night and ended with Order of Ecclesia on the Game Boy Advance or the DS actually. So I really miss those kind of games as well. So this one was scratching that itch for me. I played on Nintendo Switch, got it on sale, and the game ran very well. It did crash once though, which I jotted down, and I always am a little bit iffy when a game crashes for whatever reason. So it was it was noticeable that one spot, but other than that, it ran perfectly. So let's talk about the game itself and get into some of the general nuances of the game. I thought that this game it almost reminded me of Breath of the Wild in a sense in terms of difficulty scaling when I started because when I started I was just like, man, this game is like really hard and I was dying over and over and over again. And as you kind of reach the middle, you and get some abilities, you kind of like level up to the challenges and stuff like that, and you're not dying as much. And then by the end of the game, I mean, I wasn't dying at all. So it seemed to me like the difficulty almost stayed the same, where it's just weighted really difficult at the start. You kind of peak in the middle and you level with everything, and at the end, it's just like not really that challenging, with the exception of a few boss battles here and there. I do like that when you die, you get to keep all of your items and your money, which is at least nice because then like games like Shovel Knight, for example, you have to go and like find your loot, which is kind of annoying. But yeah, I that was the first thing that I noticed because I was having a little bit of troubles when I was first starting, and maybe it's just because I suck, but I was just like, okay, well, I feel like I'm dying all the time here, and maybe that's just because I was in the areas that I shouldn't have been at the time. But I don't know. What did you think of the difficulty deck?
I will mostly agree. I think at the beginning of the game felt easy to me because I was just immediately jumping over everything and dodging through stuff, and I was like, oh, I can just avoid like 75% of the enemies in this area. And I kind of liked that because then eventually I got to a point where I couldn't do that anymore, and I had to respect patterns of the enemies, or there were enough enemies in the area where I couldn't just dash through. I had to start parrying a little more and like respecting their attacks. But that was just my play style. Like I was just like, I'm gonna mash and just go in and go super fast, continue to move on all the time, and eventually you kind of hit a wall where you do have to slow down and take things a little more tactically and start using a few of those brain cells. But then again, yeah, towards the end of the game, you get enough like rosary beads and the prayers and whatnot that just a lot of those are like get out of jail free cards in a lot of situations, or they just make you strong enough where you're able to outplay a lot of enemies. But yeah, I think it does depend on how you approach the game. If you're someone like me who's just like mashing and really trying to like stay moving at all times and trying to and making it like a bullet hell kind of game, which I enjoyed a lot. The difficulty can vary depending on where you are and what you have available to you and what enemies are like kind of stacked on you at the time. Until again, like I said, you get towards the end of the game. I think the bosses, for the most part, stayed pretty consistently difficult. But yeah, I think it's really depends how you approach the game. If you want to be a little slower and tactical, if you want to just go headlong into things and start diving in and taking on multiple enemies at once or trying to avoid them. which I thought was fun. Once I start, like, the second I played the game and I dash, I was like, oh yeah, let's go. Like, there's a dash. I'm using this all the time. Actually, for a while, I wasn't even parrying anything because I found it just easier to just attack and jump around and dash away than to try to time a parry. So again, yeah, I think the difficulty certainly varies a little bit depending on how you approach the game, and where you are.
Yeah, I was actually thinking a lot of times because I always thought that the penitent one moved really slow. I was thinking like, man, that power up from Castlevania Aria of Sorrow, where like you just dash across and like you have that shock thing that was going around you. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that would be awesome in this game. You know what? I meant to bring this up earlier, and I'll just bring it up now so just people kind of understand where I'm coming from. I played this game about a month and a half ago, maybe. I knew that we were going to be covering it for this show, so I bought it when it was on sale for Nintendo Switch, and I was playing it, and I had a lot of, not a lot, but there were some key issues that I had with the game.
Mm-hmm.
About 3 weeks ago, Game Kitchen patched this game and added like a ton of stuff. They added new story content. They added kind of like a new game plus mode almost. They redubbed some of the voice acting, and they redid the map. Now the map, I fired up Blasphemous a couple days ago just again to kind of give myself a refresher for this show. The map looks 100% better than what it did when I played it. That was probably my biggest complaint about Blasphemous before. Is like I really loved playing the game. Like when you play the game and you're fighting and the combat and everything, the game is really fun and the game is really good. But I was like, I feel like this game should be great, and there's all of these like kind of side peripheral things that are keeping it from being great to me. And the map was the biggest one. So when I'm telling you that the map kind of held it back for me, I'm referring to the old version of the map, which luckily no one else, if you've never played Blasphemous before and you're listening to us talk about this, you'll never have to see because they patched it out. So I will say that the map I thought was like a killer for me in the original, version of this game that I played. I feel like if you are a Metroidvania game, like you gotta have a good map. You gotta have a map that's easy to see. The legend is easy to make out what things are. It's easy to see what rooms you haven't explored fully, or like where there's a door that you haven't went into the other side of the room yet. Like your map can't be confusing because then your game is confusing and it causes you to get lost very easy. And the original version of this map was very dark. You had your cursor and you would highlight rooms, but the rooms that you were highlighting, those looked fine, but then the rest of the map was like super super dark, and maneuvering around was kind of hard too. It almost was Metroid Prime where you have to hold down a button and then slowly scroll over. So that was like my biggest bone of contention. And also like I was just like, I mean, there's a million collectibles in this game, right? And the map doesn't really show or point you towards where any kind of collectibles are, not even post game. So like, in Metroid games, after you're done, it'll say like you've acquired 14 to 15 missiles in this area. This map does not do that at all. So like for completionists like me, I'm just like, okay, I have one more of these stupid flying things left. Like, where do I begin? Because this map is huge, and I got to go and track them down. So the map to me was a big, like, it was a big drawback that didn't work for me. Now that, like I said, they patched it and it looks a lot better, but I don't think that they put in any of my other issues where like you can see where missing power ups are or collectibles, etc., etc. I would say that this was a big key factor that held it back from being great to me. Dak, I know that you were saying that like you didn't really have a whole lot of problems with the map. I mean, I guess first and foremost, like when did you play this game? Was it recently or was it a while ago?
Well, now that I'm you've mentioned it, I played the demo when we first were planning on doing this, and that demo still has the old map. And then I
Right.
replayed it, the full version, this past weekend, which I assumed because I didn't know there was a patch or anything, and I forgot about the map being different. So I assumed I played the new patched version on Steam. So when I bought the full version, um, uh, yeah, I didn't really have too much of an issue with the map. I think, like I said before the show, my biggest issue, and this is an issue I have with a lot of Metroidvanias, there's no mini map. I hate having to stop what I'm doing and open the map and scroll around or look around. Like there are some times where I just want to know like what the next room over is, right? And if I've gone in it or not. Not necessarily that I'm looking for something super long down the line or like trying to keep track where I am overall at a macro level. Sometimes I just want to know like what corner I'm turning sometimes, and I should be able to know that without having to open up the map. So just having a little mini map would be so nice, and it's not there. So that's really my only drawback. And even then, that wasn't like a huge game killer for me because a lot of time I was kind of just like blazing through some parts of the levels or what area I was in. So like I eventually got to where I was going without looking at the map too much. And I also am not too much of a completionist, so I wasn't like hunting down stuff. I didn't hunt down all the uh, children or babies or whatever.
Yeah, children. That's what it was.
I don't know it's something of children, something like that. So I wasn't like dying to have like a super like complex and responsive and interactive map. I kind of just wanted a mini map, which isn't in the game. But again, not a big. It wasn't something that was a huge drawback for me.
Yeah, that's fair. So I am a completionist. I actually spent. I jotted it down. I spent about 21 hours playing this game, and I got 97%. And that 97% kills me because I want to get 100%. But like, I'm just like, I am not combing through every inch of this map to get the last 3% of the power ups in this game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not gonna do it. So that was a little bit disappointing for me. I think that it would be a completely different story if and when I go and replay this game, because I think I will, because it was a really fun game. Somewhere down the line, I think that the new map that I was checking out a couple days ago just looked like a million times better. So again, if you've never played Blasphemous and you're listening to this, the map, all the problems that most of the problems that I just brought up have mostly been fixed, and I think that the map was probably a fairly common complaint, or else we wouldn't have seen the overhaul of it. So I'm glad that the developers listened to that and took steps to make it a little bit better. Let's kind of shift gears here. We're gonna jump all over the place, but let's talk about the story, such as it is, of Blasphemous. I
don't even know what it is.
I don't even know what it is, and I looked for like a story synopsis because I was just like, okay, well, like I want to understand what happened, and I feel like I still don't understand what happened. And to me, when I'm playing this, all I can think is like, this takes itself so seriously,
Yeah.
like almost to the point of parody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it was so serious.
It was like
and I know that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
I was just gonna say, like, I know that we kind of poo-pooed on Axiom Verge and its convoluted story, and rightfully so. But like, I'll kind of take that goofy, weird story over this one, because when I was playing this, there were many times where I was just like rolling my eyes, like characters are speaking in like old English, and I'm just like, oh my god, like let's get on to the boss fight here. Or like, I have no idea who anybody is. I have no idea what happened. There was like a curse or something, and I was like, I played 21 hours of this game, and I have no idea what it's about.
Yeah, it was like reading like a Game of Thrones novel, but it like without any character or charm or wit or dialogue really that was memorable. It's just like as if a whole book was just a dense description of everything, and that's like this game. It's very Dark Souls influenced too. Like this game feels like Castlevania Dark Souls more than really a Metroid game, I would say. It wants to be Dark Souls so badly. And personally, one thing that I didn't really enjoy about this game, but again, it wasn't like a game killer. I'm just not a big fan of the whole bloody medieval thing, right? So like the whatever this game is doing and the Dark Souls, like it's not my aesthetic. I don't really care about like medieval stuff. It's cool. And like having the dark, bloody, everything's gory. I don't know what it is with indie Metroidvania games, but they all have to be so gory and grotesque. And I don't understand. Like Axiom Verge was gory and grotesque a little bit. This game is just like, Jesus Christ, like people's like guts and stuff are being pulled out. But yeah, the everyone talks with this like super serious and they might as well be speaking in tongues at some point because I don't know a bunch of the terms and everything is so laced with like purple prose. It's so dense and to a fault because anything involving lore I didn't read because it's like just a chunk of description and old English that I'm like, this is not doing anything for me. Anytime I got an item that had lore, I don't think I opened it once. I think I only read maybe what was right available on the menu that I was forced to see, and I glanced at it. I couldn't even remember anything. When people talk to each other, it's just like paragraphs at times, or just long lines of these really serious and medieval like talking at me because there's no interaction from my guy, so they're just talking at me. I'm talking at me. I'm like, all right, let's go. The game wants to be Dark Souls so badly. That was probably the thing I liked least about this game. And again, with Metroidvania indie games, is that they don't like tell a story well. And for me, yeah, like okay, I'm playing a game and I want to enjoy the gameplay. But like you said earlier, we're talking about Animal Crossing. That has to have some meaning or point to it or whatever. And that's very important, at least to me, because it's as much of as it is a gameplay experience. I like the narrative too. That's why Metroid Fusion is my favorite 2D Metroid. I love the narrative as well as the gameplay. This game, like the narrative made me like ignore it almost. It was like a turn off, and I was not paying attention to the narrative anymore. Anytime I interacted with some NPC, it was just the words were going in one eye and out the other or whatever. It was just it wasn't great, and it was trying to be Dark Souls so badly. It's not really my aesthetic. If you like this Dark Soulsy kind of thing where everything's all medievally like bloody and kind of like have like a lot of Christian undertones or whatever, then you'll probably like this. If Dark Souls doesn't already do that for you, I don't know if it really will. It didn't for me.
I don't agree with you actually, because I kind of do like the medieval kind of setting. Like I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but I like it. Like I like the Castlevania games and stuff like that. The very gothic feel.
Yeah,
this
gothic,
has a very gothic feel.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. That's I think why I didn't get into Castlevania too much, because it's like not my aesthetic whatsoever. But that's a personal thing.
Well, see, I love that aesthetic,
Yeah.
but like I still didn't like this because it was like you just roll your eyes every time that anybody says anything, because like nobody. There are some people that have names, but like you don't really know any of them. You play as a very bland character, who I kept on wanting to call him the pertinent one instead of the penitent one, and I don't know why. I think it was just because I like the font that they use is very old timey as well.
The font is so bad. Half the time I can't, like some points I couldn't read or had to like
yeah
or, like focus on what I'm looking at, and then I was like, all right, this is too much brain power. Like I can't even like it's not even
like
legible.
I kept on calling him the pertinent one because it looked like that's what they were saying, and I was like, well, this guy's I guess always on time or something. I don't know, but you kind of nailed it. Like the I think the aesthetic is cool, but it's just like it's so ridiculous that it's so serious. There's way. I'm all about having religious undertones in the game, but like this game is built on that, and it's not an undertone. It's just very in your face. You brought up something which actually I guess I'll transition to because they're kind of one and the same. There is like 1,000 million different collectibles in this games. Like there is so much to collect. There is relics, there is runes, there's prayers, there's rosary beads. There is just like every gimmick ever to collect in this game. All of them comes with like this big lore dump that I don't know if you're supposed to read, but like it looks like nonsense to me. It looks like somebody was typing and then they just let autofill, and they pressed it like 30 times to fill in the rest. And this is another thing where I'm just like, you know what? Keep it simple, stupid. Like, I would have been totally okay with this game starting off being like, you are the penitent one. There's a curse on the land, and in order to defeat that curse, you need to beat these 7 bosses or whatever. And like, that's your story. That's it. Maybe a little bit of background about the curse, but like, that's it. This game goes like so over and above and tries to just like tell you things that like nobody cares about in this world, that like I was just like, oh my god. And then when kind of transitioning to all the collectibles here, there are so many different collectibles that hidden in that description. It's like, okay, well, like what does this actually do? Like what does this do to the penitent one? Like does this make my jumping higher? Does this give me another slash?
God, yeah.
Like what does it do?
Yeah.
Because you have to scroll through all that nonsense to get to where it does. And then like constantly I was frustrated because I was like, okay, like I think that this is the relic that lets me fall down a screen and go into the next screen, but I'm not sure. And like you die experimenting with that. So I was just like, keep it simple, stupid. It was too much. There was just too much random awful text, and nobody, like, I get, maybe somebody cared about it, but I didn't care about it.
Yeah.
I was just like, tell me what it does, and I'm totally fine with that. And actually, while I'm kind of on this tangent, you mentioned voice acting. I do want to bring up something, and I want to see if you noticed it. Towards the end of the game, you fight a younger monk or something like that. Her name is Christina.
Yes. Kristana or
So
something?
she,
Yeah.
yeah. Hey, you know what? I bet you that this is patched out in your version. So in my version, her voice is like, imagine the voice of a high pitched anime girl from like Xenoblade 2, and that was her voice. It's so jarring because it flew in the face of like the very serious old English aesthetic. And I was just like, what is this? And like if you go and look up videos of Christina or Kristana fights, like every comment is about her voice. Dak, I'm assuming that was probably
I was
patched
gonna
out
say
of your version,
I
right?
actually the Chrysanta, I think that's her name, Chrysanta, or whatever. I don't know. That I liked that boss fight, and I don't remember her sounding like an anime girl, so it must have been patched out in mine because I thought the voice acting was
Yeah,
pretty solid in the game. Like it was actually well done as far as I was concerned. It was just whatever they were saying I didn't care about.
I agree.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that like just kind of auto filled it because certainly someone put in a lot of time to write out all of this stuff, and it's not that it's not well written or anything. It's just so much, and it's like detailing a world that I don't really necessarily need to know every inch of, and yeah, like you'll get like a rosary bead where it's like a whole diary entry about some person living in the woods or some or like whatever, and then at the bottom it says it buffs your attack speed. I'm like, dude, just give me that in the description elsewhere or something. Yeah, I thought the voice acting was pretty good across the board actually. So that must have been fixed for my version because I don't remember that. And that was actually one of the boss fights I liked a lot. So I think that would have stood
Yeah,
out to me.
which we'll get to. Yeah, I feel like when I saw the patch notes and it was like certain voice lines were redubbed, I was immediately thinking like they must have redubbed that because you would have noticed it if it was there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the thing about in I guess like I agree with you about voice acting, but just to kind of put a bow on the collectibles because I think that that's a big part of this game. I kind of sound like I'm dumping on them for the map not showing where they are and like the descriptions being wonky, and like I kind of am, but I also do like that there was a lot to collect because the completionist to me is like, okay, well, like I can be very busy, going around and getting all these things. However, I think that the reward for collecting all this stuff has to be really cool if you're going to do that. And when I finally collected, so I don't even know what they are. They're little trinkets, and they're from like Bartholomew the Thief or like Andrew the Pirate or like something like that. There's about 40 of them in the game, and I went out of my way. I used walkthroughs to get all 40 of them. I'm just like, all right, awesome. It's got to be like some wicked weapon upgrade or like a quadruple jump or something. And it gave me a new skin to use for the penitent one. I was so bummed. A new skin for 40 collectibles? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I like that there were a lot of collectibles, and you brought up upgrades. I want to talk about that eventually, but I like that there were a lot of collectibles. There's some games that I will 100% complete. Like I 100% completed Donkey Kong 64 for some reason at one point in my life. So I'm not against it entirely. I like that there are collectibles. I think my biggest issue, and this is kind of related, but like when you would do quests or just trying to find collectibles, there's no way to know where you're supposed to be going, or if like you're looking for one of the last ones, it's hard to really know where you should be going
Yes.
to really backtrack that. When you're doing quests, you sometimes I completely forget or I'd have no idea where I'm supposed to go to complete it, or I would stumble upon something and they're like, oh, quest completed. I'm like, oh, I didn't even realize that I was doing this. Like I wish just
100%.
just
I was going to bring that
just
up. Yeah.
along with a mini map, I wish there was like a little quest module on your screen, a little list or something that shows you like what your currently quests are active, or next steps on a quest or something, because I would just give up or I would forget and then stumble upon it or never complete it, and it kind of felt like it was just kind of tacked on as like extra things to do, but I couldn't really do them because it wasn't really like, I don't need my handheld, but I need like a guide, maybe an arrow at some point.
You need some kind of direction.
Yeah, a
Like
little
there's a
bit.
quest that you have that walking lady and she just shows up in all these random places and you're like, okay, like am I supposed to meet you here? Like am I supposed to bring you something? And it's like there's no quest index, or there kind of is a quest index, I guess, but it might as well not be there. And yeah, I was very confused and felt like very lost at certain times in the game. You wanted to bring up upgrades, and we'll definitely get there. I actually feel like the upgrades are pretty cool, so I'm kind of front loading all the stuff that I didn't necessarily love with Blasphemous, and then we'll get into like the really good stuff at the end. So let's move on and let's talk about something that I wasn't in love with, and that was the music of this game. I think that we both really liked the music for Axiom Verge, if I recall. I wasn't I wasn't in love with the music for Blasphemous. I didn't hate it. It wasn't bad. It was just like very not distinctive enough for me. It was like it was too background music esque, which is a funny thing to say because I mean obviously it is background music, but like it didn't pop. You know what I mean? Like the music that some of it did. There's some cool music hidden in the game that has kind of a very Spanish flair to it. The Desecrated Cistern in particular actually reminded me of like the old Bray Wyatt theme, which I really loved. But yeah, like the music for me didn't it didn't pop. That's the best word I can think of to describe it, Dak. What about like is this fair? Do you think? Were you a fan of the soundtrack?
I know, I agree. I think it was fine. Yeah, but it wasn't like I can't really remember much of it. I think it sufficed for what it, but it didn't really stand out as its own player in the game. You know, it didn't really have its own identity. It kind of just stuck. Yeah, it was very background music, and it fit like the theme and like themes and aesthetics of the game, which again I'm not like a crazy fan of. So yeah, like there weren't any like standout tracks or like moments where like the music would ramp up like in a way where I'd be like, oh, this is badass, or at least any that I really can remember or stick out to me, which is fine. Like I don't need every like game to be like the music like almost getting in the way of like and almost taking me out of the experience. But a lot of the time, I'm not someone who gets like so immersed in a game where I forget I'm playing a video game, right? So it is nice to have like those tracks that come out of nowhere or like really ramp things up or whatever. At the same time, I think it's okay to have these kind of lower key soundtracks, and it is well done. I think it's orchestral in a way, and changes in these different areas. It kind of reminded me of like Assassin's Creed a little bit, in terms of the music. But yeah, I thought it was fine. I think it was good. It wasn't bad. It sufficed. It did its job. But like what I say was that super standout. In terms of like Axiom Verge had some, but it had some tracks where I was like, ooh, this is pretty fire. But at the same time, they're kind of different
Yeah,
games though, and you know, I don't know how crazy you can get with like orchestral kind of tracks to really make them super diverse in that way. Like Axiom Verge has that like sci-fi, like not only sci-fi but also like is kind of tongue-in-cheek video gamey, so it kind of leaned into that music-wise, which I think worked really well. In this game, it really does take itself really seriously, so it doesn't have those like tracks that really come out and are in your face or like remind you you're playing like a sick video game and whatever, and kind of go along with your badass hack and slashing. So I again not this is one of those things about the game where it didn't take me out of the game. It wasn't like a huge drawback, but could it have been like more memorable or ramped it up, hit it to 11? Yeah, probably could have, but I think it sufficed.
I mean, yeah, it did suffice. It wasn't bad. It was
It
very
was
good.
good.
But I said this before, and I'll probably say it again before we're done recording. Like I feel like this is a really good game that should have been great, but there's just like all these things holding it back for me from being great. And the music wasn't holding it back, but it could have propelled it forward a little bit. The music thing actually for me bleeds into my next issue with Blasphemous, and this is the last thing that I want to talk about before we start talking about some of the awesome things about this game. But to me, the music didn't help with the fact that like a lot of these areas really blended together to me. I mean, there's like something stupid like I don't know, like 15 or something like that areas of this map, and some of them do have their own distinct look and feel. I jotted down the Desecrated Cistern and John Doe, and the Mountain of Endless Dusk, and the Wall of the Holy Prohibitions, which, as you can tell, everything has a ridiculous name in this game. But like, I think that those areas were pretty cool, and they had their own kind of standouts. But again, they just kind of blended together, and I think that the music didn't really help that. And I'll reference Castlevania, like when you go from the Garden of Madness to like the ballroom, like the music is banging on both sides of that, and it's like, okay, well, like now I'm in a different area, and like now the enemies look different, and now the setting looks different. This again, it wasn't a bad thing in this game. It was just kind of it was a thing I noticed, or I guess didn't notice, might be more apt, because it just kind of like blended together to me. There wasn't that, and maybe it's just because like in Castlevania, you have that little room before you go into another area, so you know that you're about to enter into a new area. Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of it blended together for me, and it just took away from the world just a little bit to me.
Well, I think it didn't help that like so many areas are like the inside of a church, the inside of a chapel, the basement of a church, the basement of it. Like
Yeah,
yeah, that like the area that stuck out to me the most was I think you might have mentioned the snowy mountain you gotta climb up. I don't remember any of the names of the levels or anything like that. Like you said, everything, even every individual person has like a name and a title. I'm just like, okay, we just why can't you just be John
yep.
or a mountain, right? But like stuff like that where you go outside, you're in like the woods or whatever, or you're on the mountain, or you're in like some wasteland or whatever, like those stuck out to me the most. But they were the exceptions to the rule. Yeah, there's so many churches and citadels and castles and interiors of those and exteriors of those where it does blend together. And also you have enemy types that will be in different areas, but like those similar areas. So like you'll fight one enemy in like the citadel, but then you're in like a church basement and you'll run into the same enemy. So it kind of does feel like it blend together. But again, I think that goes back to like the aesthetic and like thematically what it was supposed to look like that kind of tied into it, because it is trying to be very medieval. When you think of medieval stuff, you think of castles and churches and whatnot. So I think that kind of, maybe not limiting, but it was certainly within the scope of what they were trying to pull off in terms of like what the game is supposed to look like and feel like. But that meant that it was in those areas a lot. And they mix it up where maybe you're going up like this shaft, or you're on a chandelier and you're going up the chandelier, or you're on these different like metal graded platforms in this kind of slightly not industrial but like grittier area. But still, yeah, it wasn't so diverse, which I thought the enemy types were really diverse and stuff, but the areas in which they were in were not. And for as someone who wasn't the hugest fan of the aesthetic to begin with, yeah, they definitely blended together for me.
Yeah, and I feel like people that have played and enjoyed Blasphemous might not think that that's a fair criticism, but just I think it really more so comes down to the music to me, where it's just like the music was such a, like, I mean, when you go from Brinstar to Norfair, like you are in
Yep.
distinctly different places, right?
Yeah.
And like this music just kind of blended together for me, so that was something that I noticed. Okay, I feel like we have been kind of taking Blasphemous to task here for like the last 30 minutes or so. So let's kind of talk about some of the things that we did enjoy, or that we had a lot of fun with. And I guess I will just say in general, like all of this stuff that I mentioned beforehand, it's stuff that holds it back, but it doesn't ruin the game. I think that the game is really fun, and I think that playing the game is really fun. Movement is fun, combat is fun. It's very like the actual gameplay when you are moving and you are progressing is very fun, and it feels like a really top-notch game to me. I think that the combat in particular, you were talking about how you kind of ran past enemies. I was right in there. I was having a blast, even getting killed by a lot of enemies, because I thought that the combat was like really fun. It's simple, but like there's something very satisfyingly crunchy about like killing an enemy and stuff like that, and like learning its patterns. And you have these Mortal Kombat style like finish him kind of moves, which I really loved. Which actually the patch added in a ton of different finishing moves, so that's pretty cool.
Yep.
But like the actual combat of this game, I thought that it was really, really strong.
Yeah, I thought it was so much more fun than Axiom Verge. I gotta be honest. Like I was having a blast playing this game, dashing around, avoiding enemies, parrying, blasting, slashing and stuff. Like getting your enemy stacked on you. You run away from 'em, you go back. You're baiting them. You're looking for the parries. You're just going in and I'm mashing. I thought this game was so much fun. I'm a sucker for anything that allows you to move a little bit and be creative with your movement. And I love getting to combo a little bit and trying to really push the limits of what you can do in a situation. So I thought this game was great. You can go at it tactically. You can just, make it like a bullet hell, and you're trying to dodge all this stuff and get in on an enemy, or just run away a little bit as there's so many projectiles coming after you. The enemy types, so many. I mean, just like right out of the gate, like the game really hits you with a bunch of different enemy types, like almost immediately. You got enemies that are floating around, shooting, orbs at you. You got ones that are charging or throwing rocks or hitting you with a long range like candlestick or a sword. You got ones with big shields that like are super hard to take out. You've got ones that are like floating and like stabbing down at you. Like the enemy diversity in this game is awesome. That really challenges you to come up with different ways to approach an area or approach a different enemy. And then when you have different enemy types all attacking you at once and you have to respect and counter their different patterns while you're doing what you're doing, I thought was great. And then if you find yourself in a bad situation, you let one of those prayers loose or something like that, or you really just like, all right, I'm kicking into Super Saiyan, I'm going in with something. I thought the gameplay loop in this was so good. It was immediately like sticky, right? It was immediately like, this is good, this is great. And yeah, it's very satisfying. Like, you're slashing an enemy and the screen shakes and it flashes and there's different effects on each attack. You got the parry, which looks awesome. And then, right, you have the execution moves, which at some points I wouldn't even do because I'm like, all right, this guy's like a basic enemy. I'm not going to like gore him out for 5 seconds for no reason.
Oh, buddy, I did it
I didn't
every
do it every
time
time,
without fail.
but when I would do it, I was like, ooh, this is badass. This is awesome. And as many of you know, I hate Other M, but one of the things that it did, the only thing I think it did well, were those cool finishing moves you could do on enemies. I love finishing moves in any game, so I love that they added them to this. It does go back to my thing of, I don't know what it is with indie game developers where they got to make everything like so grotesque and gory. There are some points where I'm like, all right, like, geez, like their intestines are coming out. Like, oh, this is really bloody. And that's just me. It almost feels a little indulgent in a way to like how aggressively like grotesque and gory and violent it can be. But I still thought it was really awesome. It was really sick. I had so much fun with this game. Yeah, I wanted more of it in terms of like that. I was like, damn, I just want more games like this. Like I love the hack and slash element so I could still explore and collect items, but the combat was so good, so well done. And I think the combat and the gameplay in general, like any kind of parts of the game I didn't like, just the gameplay, the combat overshadowed it completely, which is why I really enjoyed this game. I think more than Axiom Verge. Yeah. It was just anything I could think of in this game that I didn't maybe enjoy the most, or it was like, it was okay or serviceable, or it was, whatever it was. The combat and the actual like meat and potatoes of the game was just so well done. I have to recommend it almost anybody if you just love, fighting stuff, because you feel like a badass with this guy.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the combat and just like the movement really like it overshadows all of the negative stuff that we talked 100%. About. So like if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, oh man, these guys have been dumping on Blasphemous, like it is definitely worth playing. This overshadows that. It makes up for it. If the other stuff was better, it would be like a 9.5 out of 10 game. But as it is, it's still really fun. I do actually like that, like, again, I'm going to use the word crunchy. It just gave me this, like, gross satisfaction of just, like, chopping people's heads off. I'm just a sick bastard, I guess, or whatever. But, one thing that I didn't like at the time, but I appreciate now, is that the Penitent one is really heavy in this game. And, like, usually when you're playing a Metroidvania, like in Castlevania or in Axiom Verge, like, you jump and it almost feels like you're floating a little bit, or even Super Metroid. Like you have a really long jump and you can stay in the air for a long time. Not so much in this game. It's very different. Like you're very heavy, and that's because you're literally like this dude in this big set of armor. So you have to you have to change your playstyle a little bit more to the grounded physics of the world, which I really grew to appreciate because it set it apart from all of these other really floaty Metroidvania games, which I really liked. Let's talk about I know that you were a big fan of the skill tree here, Dak. I'll let you kind of talk about some of the upgrades and stuff that you were getting into.
Well, I just thought it was a really good system. I think, like, being able to approach how you want to modify your character in a game and to have it suit your playstyle or experiment with how you want to do things is really cool. And something I really want Metroid to implement, like having the ability to upgrade your character personally and then also upgrade like the power-ups you get into different ways to make them interact with the environment differently. I think it's such a good idea. And I think this game nearly got it. You can get rosary beads, which will upgrade like your attack power or your attack speed, or a lot of it is pretty standard like RPG kind of stuff. Like you'll get like all right, your character's super low HP, their attack goes up, stuff like that. It's very familiar territory. I just more in general like that they implemented it at all, and being able to customize things. I think my biggest takeaway from the game though is that I wish there were more like power ups and ways to upgrade your character beyond like the general kind of stat buffs. Like I was hoping like, okay, maybe I'll get an air dash eventually, or I'll get an air parry, or I'll get a double jump, or I'll get a float jump, or I'll get a grapple, or I'll get a new weapon or something like that, or a new set of armor, and you never do. You use the same weapon the whole game. You don't really, you get your dash, you immediately have your dash and it doesn't really change. And that was one thing that I was like, if they took like an extra step and implemented those things, or like you mash this game with Axiom Verge and all of its different weapons and stuff, this game would be perfect. Like I was really hoping that you'd be able to get a lot more variety in terms of like the weapons you could use, or the upgrades or like power ups you could get, and there really aren't any. I'd like that you can upgrade your character and upgrade, and have like different prayers equipped or whatever it is, and choose your loadout in a way. That I think is a good idea. I just wish they went the extra step and made it, a little less in the familiar territory, because a lot of the stuff you see in this game is stuff you see in many games before. Nothing too like crazy or super inventive or anything, but I like that the systems are there, and it makes the gameplay feel a little more deep, even though like some upgrades like you don't really feel the effects of a lot of the time. You're kind of just like, oh, I wonder if it's really working or if even worth it. But I will say I like the implementation, just wish they went a little farther. I like the idea. I like that I'm able to upgrade my guy, maybe make him a little more of a glass cannon, focus entirely on like attack stats, something like that, maybe make him a little more tanky. I thought that was great, being able to have your prayer loadout and whatnot. And it adds to like the collectability of the game. You're collecting all these different things, so you're like, oh, this is great, add this tomorrow. So, oh, this is great, I'll swap it out with what I'm running with right now. So I thought it was great. I would love to see this kind of stuff in Metroid. Just again, I wish we got, different. I wanted an air dash, I wanted an air parry, I wanted a double jump. I was disappointed that we didn't get that kind of stuff, especially when you're running into more diverse enemies. And it felt like, ooh, this would be a great opportunity to have like a grapple now or an air parry, and I never really got that. But overall, I love that the system, the game included those systems, and I would love to see it in Metroid.
I'm glad that you brought that up, actually, because when I read, I was creeping Discord a little bit, and you were talking about how much you liked the skill tree. I was just like, I'm kind of neutral on the skill tree, because I like the idea of it, but I feel like I didn't use almost any of it. Like you can upgrade and get like an extra attack, or you can get like kind of a down thrust attack or something like that, which is fine, but like I didn't use it. And I was kind of thinking to myself like, man, Ori in the Blind Forest had a skill tree that was really useful. You could get triple jumps, you could get different attacks,
Exactly.
Lots of stuff that was really useful. So again, it wasn't like this wasn't detrimental, but it also didn't enhance anything to me. It was just kind of there, and I was upgrading my skill tree to complete it, not because I was using it or because it was making things easier for me. So that's kind of cool. Again, going back to all the prayers and the rosaries and stuff like that, I do like that you can use them and that they augment your stats and abilities. I did feel like there was a lot of filler in there. Like there were some that I got and I never used them once because like they're useless. Like you don't need them for anything. And then there are some that like you always have to have. Like you almost can't play the game without them. But there weren't enough slots for them. So like it was kind of annoying to have to pause and be like, okay, well like I only have 4 slots, but I know that I always need equipped the rosary that protects me from poisonous gas, or that protects me if I fall, or that allows me to jump in water, whatever, right? So like there's a couple different ones that like really should just be permanent abilities rather than like equipable rosaries. So that one I was just kind of like, okay, like this is fine, I guess. So I wasn't as kind of in love with that as you were, I don't think.
It definitely, like I said, it definitely needed work, right? And I like the idea of it, and it did feel at times, like I said, that I wasn't even sure if like some of the stuff I was adding was even really doing anything. It felt almost a little too subtle. But there were some
Right.
upgrades I thought were worthwhile, or yeah, I would agree to the point of like this should just be a passive, right? Maybe if there was like a little like wheel or something you could pull up on the fly to like swap things out like in the heat of battle, that'd be really cool. Because again, I
Yeah,
always
I
hate
agree.
having to like pull up the menu, stop what I'm doing, toy around with that, and then jump back in. Oh, all right, like, and I'm back in the game. I would love like the ability to swap things out on the fly. Yeah, but it definitely felt like there was some filler, a little things a little too subtle. I wish they kind of went, give us crazier upgrades to give us more like obvious upgrades and buffs and like stuff like that. Because yeah, there was some stuff you didn't even really need to get, or stuff you had early in
Like
the
even
game.
switching out, particularly in this game where it's like they're again like the all the upgrades kind of look alike, and you have
Yep,
to scroll for forever to see what anything is.
yep.
So it's like, and they all have these like nonsense names. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a wheel would have been good, or just like passive abilities would have been really good.
Yep.
Let's talk about something that was, I think, consistently excellent in this game, and that was the boss battles. I think that these were like really, really fun to me. They were really difficult, but I didn't like. I never felt like they were unfairly difficult. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, whenever I lost, I was like, oh god damn! Like, I knew what I had to do. I knew the attack pattern. I just didn't execute. And I feel like those are the kind of boss battles that I really like. I think that the only kind of exception that I would say that I had was the Cristanta boss battle or whatever her name is. My game was like really laggy in that boss battle, and you've got to be almost like pixel perfect in that one. But I mean, aside from that, there are some like really fun battles in here. One in particular that I thought was really great was I don't even know how you say this, Quirce, something like that. He's this kind of like Castlevania looking enemy. He shoots fireballs at you. It was really, really fun, really challenging. I must have died like 30 times, but like it wasn't frustrating dying. And when I finally beat him, I was like, yes, like throwing a party. So yeah, I think that the boss battles in this game were like consistently excellent. I think that this is probably the best part about Blasphemous to me.
Yeah, I think they were pretty good for the most part. A lot of the bosses kind of boiled down to like, all right, I'm gonna see what works. I die, and I by then I know the pattern. I'm like, all right, now I know what to do. Um, I like my favorite boss battles were the ones where like Chrysantha was one of my favorites. I love the ones where you're just taking out another knight your size and you're just fighting them like on a bridge or something. I thought those are my favorite boss battles. I love that. The ones where like you're fighting a big monster were cool, but those kind of boil down to like, all right, I'm smaller than this thing. I'm just gonna mash at it really close. Wait till it does its tell, right? Like, oh, it's lifting up its leg.
Right.
I wonder what it's gonna do next. Oh, it's rear and back one arm. I wonder if it's gonna slash at me. I really liked when you're fighting like a knight that's just like in the Chrysanta fight, she just like will stand at one part of the bridge, just like flash over to you and like with this crazy sword, and I'm like, oh, this is great, and it felt more like personal too. I love those. There were a couple boss battles in the game that you're fighting. Like I think the last boss. I'm not gonna spoil. Well, I guess it's a whole spoiler episode, but like the last boss battle where it's like you're fighting like a stationary thing and it's like sending stuff out at you. Those are kind of like my least favorite bosses. But I think for the most part, yeah, there weren't like any like really bad ones or ones that were too easy. But yeah, a lot of them they did boil down to like figuring out the pattern off of your first try, where you kind of just like download whatever they're doing and then implement it in your second or third try. The ones where you're fighting someone of your own stature and like they're busting out some crazy sword moves or whatever it is, I love those the most. But yeah, this game really does excel with some really cool boss battles, and they're animated really well and smoothly, which is a really strong point of this game, how well animated it is. So yeah, the boss battles are really good. It doesn't really have that like Metroid syndrome where like there are some good boss battles, but some of them are like really not good or like pretty passable. I think for the most part, the boss battles of this game are really solid. I wouldn't say that they're the best part of the game for me. I still think like just going through an area and just busting ass with what you got and just dodging and jumping around and stuff and making the most of your abilities was my favorite part of the game. But yeah, I thought the boss battles were pretty solid overall.
Okay, well you kind of mentioned it there, but let's talk about it a little bit more in depth. I think that the animation and the just like the pixel work and the graphics, I guess for lack of a better term, in this game looked really really nice.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of complaining about the areas earlier blending together a little bit, and I still stand by that. But I do feel like the world looks really nice. I think that the design of the pendant one in particular is really cool. Like you have that tall kind of goofy looking helmet, but it kind of looks badass at the same time. Promotional images for this game I think look really cool, like, and even those are like kind of pixely. I was uh, I was a big fan of the game's kind of artwork and aesthetic, and I was curious to see if you would be too, because I wasn't sure if you were like the biggest fan of pixel work or not. So,
Yeah.
Dak, what do you think?
I'm not someone who grew up with like a Super Nintendo or NES or any of those kinds of things, right? Like my first console was an N64, and I had like a Game Boy Advance, so that was, it's not like I don't like pixel stuff or anything like that. But when I was playing this game, I was like, damn, if this game was like 2.5D or 3D, it would be so much better. Yeah, oh,
Really? Oh,
100%.
I don't agree at
100%.
all.
I think the pixel work looks really good. I mean, it's gorgeous pixel art, and the animations, I mean, are like almost like crazy smooth for a pixel 2D game. I mean, some of the enemies and the background areas are so well animated. I will say though, like the cutscenes are like the artwork for the cuts, like the few cutscenes or whatever in the game, or however many there are in the game. The artwork is kind of cool. The animation is kind of and so I was like, I don't know if these cutscenes are hitting for me, but in game, it just is so well animated, and I was running on PC. I didn't have any frame drops or anything. It looks so smooth. Even just coming down to like your attack animations, the executions, everything looks good. But yeah, part of me wishing I was like, if this was like, it looks good as pixel art and it looks great. I think it looks really fantastic, and I enjoyed it. I didn't dislike it or anything. But if it was a 3D game, I'm like, wow, I think this would look so much better. I think it would be I think it would have really stuck with me more. But I like it for what it is. I think it really just comes down to personal preference. I think it looks really amazing. It's so well animated. And again, I'm not someone who likes the aesthetic, so maybe that's part of it too. But or like isn't not that I don't like it, but just not a huge super fan. But I think it looks really good. It's one of the best pixel games I've really looked at. I mean, some of the scenery in the backgrounds like looks really awesome. You're getting these long like landscapes and vistas that like will scroll with you, and you get to see different like corners and canyons in the back. Like I thought that was really awesome. The lighting is really great, and I do think like for the most part everything kind of stands out on the screen. I never really had like legibility issues in terms of like fighting a bunch of enemies or anything like that. But again, one of those things where I was like, ooh, if this was like a 2.5D game or 3D game, like in terms of the animation, I think it would have been just a little bit better for me. But again, personal preference.
Okay, fair enough. I thought it gave it a little bit of character, which like I was thinking is something that this game desperately needed, was like something to make it stand out, because like a lot of it, like I said, was blending together a little bit for me. Um, let's kind of wrap
Wait,
things up here.
before you
And
go on,
give
I'm
our...
sorry, but that's actually interesting. You brought that up because it being pixely to me didn't. The animations of the pixel work I felt like gave it character, but when I look at a pixel like 2D game, like, oh, this is an indie game. Like I played a bunch of these games. It almost kind of doesn't give it character to me because I've seen it so many times. Like now, like in 2020, the retro pixel art has been done so many times for that nostalgia value that to me, like it kind of is like, it reminds me that I'm playing an indie game. It reminds me that I've played a game like this aesthetically before. So it was interesting that you say that it gives a character, because I kind of, it almost like made it feel like it's like I've seen this kind of game before, just because it's been done so many times. I almost wish it was a little more stylized, and maybe it had like, it wasn't pixely, maybe like hand drawn or something like that. I don't know. But again, I don't want that to say like I didn't like the game how it looked. I think it still looks absolutely gorgeous and is so well animated. So if you're not even a huge pixel art fan like I am, and I like pixel art, but if it doesn't hold like a super like strong spot in your heart or anything, I still think you'll enjoy this game a ton like I did. And if you do like this kind of artwork, you'll be absolutely in love with it. So
Yeah, that's fair. It's funny because like I'm listening, like when you describe your feelings on pixel like 2D games, I'm just like, that's kind of like almost how I feel about 2.5 games, where I'm like, I've kind of seen this before. Those remind me that like it's just not a 3D game. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's like,
I
so
feel you.
it's funny. I mean, it boils down to like what you like, right? So, and I think either way, like you said, like the pixel work does look really good for what
It's
it is.
astoundingly good. It's one of the best pixel art games I think I've seen in a while.
So take us away. Final thoughts on Blasphemous before we get out of here, Dak.
Sure. I thought this game was great. I think I'll even try to go and maybe I won't do the 100% completion, but I would like to try and give it another run, maybe on Twitch or something like that. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was the combat is so great. It looks really well done. The animation's awesome. It does take itself a little too seriously, but it is what it is. I still think it gives you a really solid experience. It's not an expensive game. If you can get it on sale, great. If not, it was $25 on Steam, which I think is. I mean, I paid $20 for Fall Guys. I'm getting sick of that game. So I think this it's really cool. I wish there was maybe like a boss rush mode or like maybe something else to give it a little more replay value. But really solid game. Highly recommend it. You should really check it out. I do think it has more Castlevania and Dark Souls influence than it does Metroid. I feel like Axiom Verge was certainly more on the Metroid side of the Metroidvania thing. We have a little more Vania on this in this case. That being said, phenomenal game. Highly recommend it. You should definitely pick it up. I recommend playing it on Steam because you can't really go wrong with that. But if you can play it on console, I'm sure playing on the Switch would be really cool too. Really great game. I think it's awesome. I am a big fan of it, and I thought it was better than Axiom Verge. But if you mash the two games together, you'd have a perfect one. Recommend for me. Really enjoyed this. Great game.
Yeah, so just to add kind of to what you said there, it actually, so Blasphemous, this big patch that we've been mentioning throughout the show here, it took place on August 4th. So it did add new recent, areas, yeah. It added new enemies, it added a new game plus. So like there are definitely reasons to go back and replay this. I feel like I'm probably going to give this another go at some point, just because like all the new stuff that they added in like really seems like it's going to improve the overall experience. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for that. I wish that I had waited to play the patched version because, like I said, I really liked Blasphemous. It's a good game. I feel like it should have been a great game because when you're playing it and you're moving in the world and you're fighting, my thought is like this is a great game. But when I have to pause and like look at the map or look at the upgrades or look at the million collectibles or like want to go back and finish the game, I'm just like, this is bad. Like it's not even mediocre, it's bad. And those kind of pull down this what plays like a great game, and it makes it only a good game to me. So, I think that, like I said, a lot of the issues that I had were probably patched out. So, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and go back and give it another spin. This new game plus is supposed to be even harder and more difficult than the original game.
I'll have to try it.
So there we go. I mean, I would definitely recommend it to Metroid fans. It's certainly more of the Vania than Metroid, but that's okay. I think that not every game needs to be sci-fi-esque. We got to have some variety in there. So yeah, I had a fun time with Blasphemous. It was a lot of fun, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody looking to kind of scratch your Metroidvania itch while we wait for a new Metroid title.
Yeah, which maybe we'll get some news on the 17th, if that even happens. I guess I got lucky replaying it over this past weekend because I didn't even know there was a patch. I just, like I said, I played the demo way back when, and I was like, oh, this is great, So like some of the issues didn't even occur to me because they probably didn't even exist anymore. I'm gonna try. I think replaying it again soon, probably on Twitch. Go for the new game plus, or just running it again at the base and trying to go for 100% or whatever it is. Yeah, definitely more Vania. Really great game. I think you would say though that you enjoyed Axiom Verge more, but okay. I like Axiom Verge. Don't get me wrong, but this just hit a different spot, man. And I think it's that dash. I think once you give me a dash, I'm like, ooh yeah, let's go. I just wish I had like an air dash, something like that. Blasphemous 2 or whatever it is, expanding on those things that I think are just nearly there would be absolutely superb. And if there was like a sci-fi version of this game and mixed in a little of the Axiom Verge stuff, would be perfect. But yeah, great game. Loved it. And I'm glad that we picked this as the second game of our Inspired by Metroid. Even if it was a little less inspired by Metroid than the previous game, it still inspired me to play a great game. And I hope it inspires all of you to check it out.
Well, I think that the third game that we picked for Inspired by Metroid is completely bonkers, and people are going to flip out when we announce what that game is. And just to be clear,
it's Bug Snatch.
Inspired by Metroid is just about the Metroidvania formula of like progressing, upgrading, going back, progressing further, upgrading there, fighting wicked bosses, exploring the map, and having that kind of interconnected world where it's like a big puzzle box to figure out. So like, not every game has to be a sci-fi experience to be inspired by Metroid, right, as the next game that we're going to cover is going to tell you. So I'm looking forward to that. That one won't be coming for a while, but I'm already really, really pumped to play our third Inspired by Metroid franchise or game, because I don't think anybody is going to see it coming.
I agree. I almost wanted to give a little like pun hint, but I almost feel like it would just give it away. You know, I'm not trying to get too batty over the game, so I think I'll just leave it at that, and I'm excited to play that one as well because it's one of my favorites. One of my favorite games from I don't know how long it's been, but it's I haven't played it in a while, but when it came out, y'all will know this game. I think many of y'all probably even played it already.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Let's not give anything away. We hope that you guys really dug this episode of the Omega Metroid podcast, and check out Blasphemous. It's a great game. It's over on Steam, it's over on every console, so check it out, and make sure that you check us out over on iTunes and Podbean and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Like and subscribe to the show. That's going to do it for us for today. We want you to check us out over on Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod. You can check me out over at Spiteri316 and Dak out at the Rapture _. Make sure that you're back next week, because hopefully, we have some Metroid news, finally. But let's not get our hopes up. That only leads to disappointment. Yeah, the life of a Metroid fan. Until next week, guys, we will see you then.